Hello, Tom.
Hi.
Today we continue our series of English lessons, Speak Like President, and today's president is Jimmy Carter. And I was watching videos. He seems to be a soft-spoken and very humane and humble man. What do you think? Was he a good president?
Well, people have different opinions. I generally liked him, yes.
Okay. Well, you mentioned in our previous video that some people thought he didn't look presidential because he was uh, carrying his own bags.
Exactly. He was what you call a very homespun type person, not very proud, which a lot of people didn't consider to be very presidential.
He's going to try to seduce the Eastern Ukrainians, many of whom speak Russian and so forth, to look with Russia on a favorable basis. He's going to woo them with loans and with trade concessions and that sort of thing. So they
Woo means to court or romance someone. So a man can woo a woman to get her to marry him. And also it can be used in politics and business when people try to impress someone or get someone to do something based more on emotion than on practicality.
And another word that comes to my mind that close to this word is to wow. You can try to wow someone with something, correct?
Right. That would be a play on the word woo.
Or it comes from a surprise exclamation when someone says, wow, right? So you want to achieve the same result. You do something, so they say that. So you try to wow them.
Yes, that's true.
If our two great countries could get together and say, why don't we make these mutual concessions, in my opinion, Europe and the rest of the world would go along with it.
Concession. A concession is something that you give up. For example, one country might agree to give up a claim on another country. That would be a concession. A concession is also similar to a commission or a franchise. So when you go to the beach and you go to the concession stand to buy hot dogs or hamburgers, the city granted the right to the concession stand to sell on the beach.
And the idea is they gave up the right. It belongs to the city, right? But they gave up their right or sold the right to sell
the concession
food.
stand owner, right.
Right. So to make concessions also, it means to give up something, right? And if those concessions are mutual, then it's like it's a give and take process.
That's correct.
I'll start with the worst statistic that I know, and that is that 160 million girls are now missing from the face of the earth because they were murdered at birth by their parents or either selectively aborted when the parents find out that the fetus is a girl's.
Face of the earth, that's a poetic expression. You could also say disappeared from sight, but disappeared from the face of the earth means literally that it's almost like they don't exist anymore, even though they probably do, but just somewhere else.
And it's a cliche, correct?
It's also a cliche too. If you put that in a paper, your teacher will probably underline it and tell you to use a better expression.
So you can say it disappeared from the face of the earth, or maybe was wiped out from the face of the earth.
You could also use it in a literal sense too, yes. If something is completely destroyed so badly that you can't even see any remnants of it.
Maybe as a result, in the aftermath of a hurricane, you can say a city was wiped out from the face of the earth.
Right, hurricane or flood or some natural disaster.
In some parts of Asia, you can buy a girl, they can buy a girl for $1,000. In Europe, Europe and so forth, it costs up to $8,000. But a pimp or a brothel owner can make about $20,000 a year per girl.
A pimp is a person who finds customers for prostitutes, and it's typically a low reputation job, very criminal.
But high paid.
But it can be high paid too, yes. A brothel owner is someone who owns a house of prostitution. A brothel is a house of prostitution. So a pimp can also has an alternate definition, which means to cheat someone. So, for example, you could say, I got pimped out of extra money for some fine, or if there's some punishment that somebody might face for something involving money, they might say, I don't want to get pimped.
And it's not necessarily financial?
It could be usually it would be some sort of financial punishment. But it could also be some type of property as well.
If I return my books or DVDs late to the library, I can say I was pimped for $10?
Exactly. Or similarly, let's just say that somebody they're speeding and then the police sees their car. The police take their car. So you could say the police pimped him out of his car. Or some people might view taxes that way. They could say, I got pimped out of $20,000 in taxes this year.
Okay. And also, is there a show, it's called Pimp My Ride?
I'm not familiar with that show, but in this case, pimp would refer to making something more exotic. Back in the olden days, pimps used to dress in very flashy looking clothes, big hats, feathers in their hair. I don't know if they still do that anymore, but if you pimp something up, that means you make something look very fancy, very gaudy. So you could pimp your car or pimp up your car. You could also pimp up your house as well, or your apartment.
And ride in this case means a car when they say pimp your ride. So a ride is a colloquial or slang word for a car, right?
Right. And people also talk about how they ride, which refers to how they accomplish a specific task. So it doesn't have to be a car. A musician could be referring to his guitar, or a golfer could be referring to what kind of clubs he plays with.
So how would they use that?
They would say, this is how I ride. And then they would list the different types of equipment that they use to fulfill the task. Similarly, a soldier could do the same thing. He would list his weapons and what he keeps in his knapsack.
And so this goes on a lot in our country as well as in other countries. But just look, our country is pretty well culpable as well.
Culpable. Culpable refers to being blamable for something. Not necessarily guilty, but definitely blamable. So especially if there's some activity where possibly the guilt is divided between different people, then each of the different parties might be culpable for part of the blame for something that happened or something that went wrong.
So you can say the politicians try to make president culpable for the recent economic downturn.
Exactly. They're trying to blame somebody for something. Or you could say, talk about the State Department. You could say, is the State Department culpable for some of the negative things that are going on in the world?
And I think there's a famous Catholic formula. They say mea culpa, which means
Mea,
my guilt, I am guilty.
Yeah, mea culpa means I'm guilty. So what some people will do is if anybody accuses them of being guilty for something, they will say mea culpa or imply mea culpa, which means they accept the guilt for something, even if they didn't do anything wrong.
That's all for today. Tom Taylor is an ESL tutor. He teaches English in the United States and outside, all over the world using Skype. He can be reached at his website, which is
ESL-fullsteamahead.com.
Click on this link and check out his website and email with questions. Thank you, Tom, and I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.